Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Dratch, Rabbi Sher, Rabbi Mintz, for those inspiring words and that inspiring conversation. I'd like to introduce next up Rabbanit Sarah Walkenfeld, Director of Education at Sefaria, an online database and interface for Jewish texts. She also has served as the JLI Director of Education at the Center for Jewish Life, Hillel at Princeton University, and on the faculty of the Drisha Institute, and at the Ida Crown Jewish Academy. She also directs the Adamar Strauss Memorial Mikveh in Chicago. She is joining us here in her capacity as Director of Education for Sefaria, and she will share with us some of the highlights of what Sefaria can offer us as Jewish educators to spread more Torah around the world.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that introduction. I'm really grateful to Rabbi Dratch and to Rabbi Feldman for inviting me, and it's an honor to be here among so many friends and teachers of mine. I'm hoping that everybody who's in this space right now does know a little bit about Sefaria, but I would like to tell you a little bit more, tell you some things that you might not know. I'd like to frame it specifically in the context of Rav Stein Zatzal's legacy, which has been so influential for us at Sefaria, and also to speak, as Rabbi Feldman mentioned, a little bit about some of the tools that Sefaria can provide you with as you think about your own Harbatzot Torah, your own ability to put your Torah, your compelling messages out there into the world. I'm going to share a source sheet with you that I made for this gathering. So hopefully this is something you could take with you and also might answer some questions that you might have now or afterwards about Sefaria. I also put my own email address there. You're welcome to be in touch anytime. And please feel free to add questions into the chat as I'm speaking. I'm not a great multitasker, but I will do my best to catch those as they come in. If you have used Sefaria and you have questions about it, or if questions come up along the way. I'm going to share my screen so that I can show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. Okay, hopefully you can all see that now. Sefaria is a nonprofit. We were founded in 2013 to lower barriers to Torah learning and make the Torah freely accessible. And exactly what Rabbi Mintz spoke about so inspiringly just a few moments ago, Sefaria shares a very similar mission. We believe that the Torah belongs to everyone. We believe that it belongs to all Jews and that everyone should have access to the Torah. Sefaria's co-founders, Josh Foer and Brett Loxbizer, are not rabbis and they are not Jewish educators still to this day. Brett at the time was a project manager at Google. Josh was and is an author and journalist, but they did believe very deeply that the Torah should be accessible to all Jews, and that when we speak about Torah being accessible, we're not just talking about I can go to my rabbi's classes, I can join my local Orthodox shul. Those are all great things, but that really the stuff of Torah, the words of Torah themselves, should be something that everyone can access. And I know some of you, I sadly don't know all of you personally, but for those of you who've been in the rabbinate for more than a few years, you might remember what used to happen if you Googled for Jewish texts online. If you tried to do a Google search, or before there was Google and that took over the world, there were things like Yahoo search and things like that. If you tried to search online for a text, and especially let's say for a Talmud translation, I don't know if any of you remember what would happen, but I can refresh your memory. The top hit for English Talmud on Google was an anti-Semitic website. It's still up, I checked not that long ago, so at least as of a few months ago, it was still up. I never really understood the connection between putting the Talmud online and achieving their anti-Semitic mission. Like that connection was never made totally clear to me, but it's clear from the site that that was their intent. It was also illegal. They illegally put up the Sansino translation of the Talmud, which is, in case you're wondering, still under copyright. And that's how people were finding the English Talmud, if they were finding it at all. And the core mission of Sefaria is to allow people to access Torah. It's important to us that the site itself is open source. Anyone can take our code and work with it. So this is a session about Sefaria. I can't speak eloquently about other people's tools, but I want you to know that if you use websites like 929, Hatanach, Al HaTorah, those websites are powered by our data in whole or in part. And that's because the code on our site is open source. It's set up, if you're like me and you're not an engineer, it's set up so that anyone can take what we've created and use it. If any of you are actually hidden app developers and you're planning that as your next career, you should know you can take the code of Sefaria site and use it to build your own Torah promotion platform, whatever that might be. So that's really important to us, that aspect of the Torah belonging to everyone. We wanted to empower learners from all backgrounds to explore the text, and Rev Steinsaltz Zatzal was an incredible partner for us in achieving that mission. Now Sefaria is pretty established, we like to think. To give you a sense of where we've come to, we had around 530,000 unique users on the site last month. And that's like a pretty typical monthly number for us at this point. Our traffic, not surprisingly, maybe you could imagine for yourself, you can put yourself back there, our traffic spiked in March of 2020. Like if you look at that on our graphs, it's like, whoop, it just went right up. And it never came all the way back down. So we expect our numbers will stay at around those levels. And yet when we first came to funders and we first came to potential partners, a lot of people looked at us like we were basically crazy. And Rev Steinsaltz was one of the rare leaders, along with, I hope it's okay to mention, Rabbi Sachs Zatzal was another early supporter of Sefaria's. And Rev Steinsaltz got it right away, and he understood what we were trying to do. And you can say like the rest is history, but we are so lucky to have the Steinsaltz translation of the Talmud on Sefaria. So lucky to have that in full. And really all of Klal Yisrael is so lucky to be able to access that translation wherever they are and wherever they go. We have an iOS app, we have an Android app, and I know from pairing the quantitative data with the anecdotal evidence, I got so many emails in March and April of 2020. You know, I left my shul office and I didn't know I wasn't going to go back for months. You know, my students left the school and they didn't bring their Sfarim with them. We didn't know. We thought it was going to be, I think when my children's school closed, I think they told us they were closing for 2 weeks, right? Aspirationally. So that was not how that happened. And a lot of Sfarim were left behind in a lot of places. And we got so many emails and so many notes thanking us for just the sheer access. So that is very important to us. I mentioned already that we're building digital infrastructure. And the other piece that I think is really important to this message of getting your Torah out there into the world is that Sefaria also empowers people to make their own, we'll call them source sheets for now. I'll tell you later why maybe that's a bad name for those, but you can make source sheets, you can put out your Divrei Torah into the world. And that is really important to us. We really believe that everyone has something to contribute. We believe that those of you who have built your lives around teaching and learning Torah should have a platform for sharing that. And that's been really important. And that's also something where we got a lot of pushback early on. True story, my first job for Sefaria was to contact 49 Jewish educators. It was right before Sefira. And I was supposed to contact 49 Jewish educators and ask them if they would put their source sheets on Sefaria. And I don't know if you want to take a guess in the chat how many people said yes. But the answer is one. One person said yes. I know who he is. And everyone else said, no, why would I share my sheets publicly? Why would I make them on Sefaria? Why would I share them publicly? So it was an uphill climb. Today we have around 310,000 sheets on Sefaria. Maybe around 33,000 of those are public sheets. And last year we had over 13,000 individuals create those sheets. So in terms of the sheer amount of Harbat Torah going on, there are a lot of people putting a lot of Torah out into the world, and Sefaria is so privileged to be able to capture that. I'm going into this assuming that you've all seen Sefaria at least to some extent, so I'm not going to show you everything that we offer. I just want to call out a few, first of all, recent changes and additions. I'd love to invite your feedback about what else you would like to see on the site, so feel free to put that in the chat or you can message me anytime. Send me a note, I'm here. So I'll just show you a few of the things that Sefaria is offering currently, as well as talk about specifically how you might promote your Torah, your congregation's Torah, your synagogue's Torah, your institution's Torah on Sefaria. This is our text library. Hopefully you're familiar with it. Watch this space because it's being redesigned. launching in, I think, late July. But for now, this is what it looks like. We have texts that are licensed to the Creative Commons by and large. And so if you don't see your favorite text here, it's probably because it's under copyright. Fun, interesting copyright things that I have learned over time. Possibly, some people think you can copyright digital versions of text. So even if you take a text that's very obviously public domain and you make it digital, arguably you can copyright that, which is why the entire Bar-Ilan store is under copyright, even though they took texts that were not under copyright, but that's something you can arguably do. So we try to have everything. Everyone's everything is different. That's one problem, right? 2 Jews, 3 opinions. And also we're bound by copyright. Everything in our library, I think the most important feature of our library is that everything here is interlinked with other sources. So when I open this week's Torah portion, which happens to be my bat mitzvah parsha, I'm pleased to say, you get this sidebar and you can find Mefarshim, you can find other linked texts. All of this is here to explore, so you can think of this as your base medrash for your own sheer preparation. But also, if you're teaching on Zoom or with a smartboard of some sort, this is also a platform from which to teach, which is not the way most people think about it. Most people think about it more in terms of sheer preparation. But I want to say that it's actually incredibly powerful that now anyone can see that actually there's not just Rashi on this pasuk. There's a lot of Mefarshim on this pasuk. And by the way, also this pasuk, which is like not maybe the most gripping, is also quoted in the Bavli. And you can find those references here as well. And maybe that's the piece that you're going to choose to speak about. Maybe that's something that the people you're teaching are going to find interesting. So the interlinked nature of texts is really important to us at Sefaria, and we're constantly adding new links. We just added Lieberman's Tosefta last week or earlier this week. And then just after that, added some large number of thousands of links between Tosefta, Mechilta, Gemara, and I forget what else, lots of Midrashim. Those links are mostly algorithmic, though it takes a lot of work to get those in. And so we're constantly adding more texts in the sidebar. And we just recently redesigned the side panel. So if you haven't looked for a while, that's what it looks like. Sefaria is also always trying to add more modern Torah. So things that may be under copyright or just it's too much volume for us to add to the site. And you can see that when you look at web pages. So probably some familiar things here, Aish HaTorah, My Jewish Learning, or Torah Stone, YU Torah Online, right, just to name a few. These are all websites that put out Divrei Torah or Torah-based articles. When they quote a source, that source links to Sefaria, and Sefaria can then link back. Full disclosure, I advocated for this feature after years of using the VBM. I don't know if any of you ever use it to prepare shiurim. It's a great site to use to prepare shiurim, except that previously you couldn't get the text. It wasn't full quotes of the text. So to make a Daf Makorot from the VBM was actually really hard. We wanted to make it really easy. And now we've done that by linking the texts that are quoted. So those are all some of the things that you can find in the sidebar experience. And again, that linked Torah experience is really core, I think, to what makes Sefaria. And we've added some other fun things here, like you can click to hear the Torah reading if you want to hear the audio. And we've also added manuscripts recently. So that's a fun thing as well if you want to see a manuscript version. I think it's even more fun with the Gemara where we have multiple versions. And sometimes it's really fun to see what it looks like without Rashi and Tosfot on the daf. But anyway, that's something that we added recently. So those tools are all in the sidebar experience. We also have built-in reference materials, so dictionaries and rabbinic biographies. Hopefully you can see why this is really important in the preparation that you all do for shiurim. Also the case that we wanted people to be able to find relevant sources without necessarily knowing what text to open. So I don't know what percentage of the average rabbis, average shiurim sort of fall into this category, but I think sometimes I want to speak about Parshat Beha'alotcha, and other times I need to speak about Israel this week. I need to speak about anti-Semitism. I need to speak about whatever the topic may be, and I'm going to try to find the texts that speak to that topic. Sefaria has a built-in search feature that allows you to search topically. I think my hopefully outgoing, but for the last year, current favorite search has been what happens if you type COVID into Sefaria's search bar. I think that's a great example because it is not a word, as you may know, that appears in the texts of our tradition. But because so many people, beginning around March 2020, made sheets about COVID, we now have a full collection of Torah and sources from, right, starting with Tanakh, that users have told us are about COVID. And so if you want to teach about reflecting on illness, quarantine, and risk, or Jews and the plague, right, all of these topics that have come up for so many of us over time, you can search that on Sefaria. And again, I think that's a really core piece of the Sefaria experience. And if I can put in one plug to one actual request for talented rabbis, talented, busy rabbis, I would say. I'm married to one, so I think I have insights on this. I would say that not only do I think sharing your Torah out is so important in terms of the impression that you can make on the world and the Torah that you can teach, but also don't reinvent the wheel. You should be able to access useful materials, and you should be able to use and reuse those. The example I always give, I sort of wasn't thinking about my bio, but Rabbi Feldman mentioned that I used to work at Princeton University, and I was on a listserv for the Hillel staff, like Hillels across the country, and I would get all of these questions every year. Somebody every year before Purim would put out on the listserv, has anyone ever taught a class about Jews and alcohol? And the answer, of course, was yes. Actually, every single person on this list either has taught that class or is planning on teaching that class, because it's Purim and we work on a college campus. So, and I can tell you, and you could probably say better than you could cite chapter and verse, that there's only maybe 5 really great classic Jewish texts about Jews and alcohol. Right? Start with the Gemara and Megillah. We'd work out from there. Yes, someone wanted to say a number or a citation?
You know, how could he do his job? So,
Driving anywhere.
13A.
Maybe 13A, there you go. So many possibilities, right? But there's actually only just so many possibilities. And I don't really need to take the time to copy and paste that source, right? I could just grab those 5 sources. And what's important is the Torah that I'm going to teach using those Makorot. It's not the time that I spent searching the Brahilans to remember that that's where it was in Megillah. And so I think that we really want people to share for both of those reasons. Both so people will learn from your Torah, but so also so that we can all lift each other up and benefit a lot from the Torah that all of us are constantly in the process of creating. I got a question about accessing the sidebar, so I'll just say really briefly, and then I'll wrap up, that you can access the sidebar anytime just by clicking on a text. So the rule of Sefaria is just click because pretty much everything is a link. So when I click on the Gemara, I get the sidebar. I click on Halacha, I open there. Click on the Mishnah Torah, I can click open. We have a sort of endless moving sidebar experience. So you can always find more text and more text and more text that connect to those. One of the things that I know our shul leaned into, and I think a lot of shuls leaned into over the course of the pandemic, was putting more Torah online. We launched a project for the high holidays, I guess for the Yamim Noraim this past year, encouraging rabbis to post their drushos on Sefaria. So this is a cross-denominational cross-section of Yamim Noraim drushot, which are on Sefaria, because, and this is my, I'll end with this, but this is the big secret of Sefaria. A source sheet on Sefaria is really, it's really just a web page. It's not a source sheet in the sense that we sometimes use it, where it's not paper and it's not, you didn't have to actually, cut and paste, and it's dynamic. That means that it contains links. That means that it can contain audio, video, etc. Right here, click here to watch a video recording of Rabbi Exer's Rosh Hashanah sermon. Some of them have embedded audio or video. So there's really a lot of options here. You can put in images, right? Anything that you can do with a web page, anything that you would be able to do if you built a web page. Here's one with embedded video. So you could actually watch the video of the drasha while looking at the Makorot that he quotes. And that's a really powerful experience. It means that people watch it at home, even if they were there in shul, right? They could watch it afterwards. It means that it's recorded. It means that it could be branded. In this case, it's just collected into a Sermons on Sefaria space. But Sefaria collections are actually spaces where organizations create branded collections of materials, essentially. So some of these are shuls, and some of these are schools, and some of these are other kinds of organizations. But what they have in common is that they've created a branded collection of their sheets on Sefaria. And that's a place, right, when you create one of these collections, you get a branded space on Sefaria that people can go to discover your Torah. So randomly, here's GW Hillel. I just know that they have a good picture because this is from an ice cream series of classes that that was taught. And all of these sheets, right, it links back to the website, etc. So there's a lot of opportunities there to put your Torah out there into the world. And really, we hope that you will do that. We think, again, that it's very, very valuable for everybody to be able to learn from what everyone else is doing. And really, Sefaria is built in a lot of ways to both give people a sense of connection to individuals who are teaching Torah, also to the Torah itself, and also to create a dynamic where Torah is being shared. And my favorite Sefaria text, I'll end with this and then see if there are any questions. My favorite Sefaria text, even though it might not seem like a Sefaria text, is from the Gemara in Chagiga. It's a very famous Gemara, usually quoted because it contains this line about how Efshar lebeit midrash b'lo chidush, right? There's no such thing as a beit midrash that has no chidush. And this is in response to two rabbis coming to their teacher and saying, he says, what did you learn in school today? And they say what your kids say when you say, what did you learn in school today? Which is, of course, is nothing. But then the conversation goes from there. He says, no, it's not possible that you didn't learn anything. But I actually think that the punchline of the story really comes much later, after they finally cave and they finally do explain to him. And he says, wow, you had this Margala Tavar, you had this great pearl of wisdom. It translates really directly into English. And you didn't want to share it with me because Hashem labdami meni. You wanted to hide it from me. And I think that that's where Sefaria is situated, is we believe that there's so much amazing Torah and so much wisdom that is being not shared or shared just locally. And we want to help all of you share it more broadly. So I'll end with that. But again, you have this sheet now, you have this link, and you're welcome to be in touch with me anytime. Thank you.
Rabbi Dratch.
Yes, thank you very much. Sarah, thank you so much. That was